What is up, guys? Welcome back to another GeekaWhat video. Today I've got an insane $1,200 gaming PC build coming at your faces. This build's going to take any of the latest titles that you throw at it at some really respectable frame rates and settings, as we'll see in a moment's time. Before that though, if you enjoyed today's video, get subscribed and smash that like button. It really does help me out. Whether it's 1440p at high and ultra settings in the latest AAA titles whilst maintaining the key 60 frames per second frame rate, or whether you want to jump up to 4K in certain games while still hitting that key 60 FPS mark at medium to high settings, this build will take anything you throw at it. Not only that, this build also opens the door for a bit of productivity in the form of live streaming or video editing, so prospective YouTubers out there, this thing has you covered. Now though, for the first part in this build, the CPU, what exactly did I select? The AMD Ryzen 2600 builds on the success of the initial Ryzen 1000 series in the form of an updated chip on the Ryzen 2, Ryzen Plus, Ryzen Gen 2 architecture, if you will. This 6-core 12-thread chip boasts a good base clock of 3.4 and good boost clock speed of 3.9 GHz in a power-efficient 65-watt TDP package. It also includes a great stock cooler, though I did go for something a bit different here, which I'll explain in just a moment's time. All in all, it's a fantastic chip and can actually be overclocked very easily in this build to give you performance that rivals the substantially more expensive and bigger brother 2600X CPU. All in all, you can't go too far wrong, and links for all parts will be in the description below. The next part in this build is that mysterious CPU cooler that I alluded to just a moment ago. Coming in from Deepcool, this is their GAMMAX GT, and you can see it lit up behind me. It looks completely incredible. This thing not only looks fantastic, but performs equally as well and gives us plenty of overclocking headroom to get this CPU well past the 4 GHz mark to excel the single-threaded performance by yet another degree. This particular cooler definitely has a Hyper 212-esque kind of vibe to it, with a fairly minimal number of heat pipes, but enough to get that heat moving around, and plenty of fins to help dissipate the heat with an active 120mm fan for cooling. This thing's a bit more special though, with an RGB fan and RGB top plate on the cooler itself, which is like really bright and looks fantastic. You get a range of RGB effects with an included controller, and at around $40 the price is subject to change though, of course. This thing is a real bargain in my opinion. Good overclocking leverage, great aesthetics, and a good price tag make it a really good bet. For the motherboard in this build, I selected the MSI B450 Gaming Pro Carbon AC. This particular AC model boasts Wi-Fi, which solves many of the issues and complaints a lot of people have with their first systems, that often plugging an Ethernet cable in the back just isn't overly practical. Internet aside though, this thing supports up to 64 gigs of RAM with 4 RAM DIMM slots for good future proofing and upgrade paths. Not only that, it sits on the updated B450 chipset with greater support for overclocking than the previous B350 motherboard lineup, and also some of the more inexpensive B450 boards. You also get USB 3.1 Gen 2 in the form of USB A and C on the rear panel, an M.2 drive as well, M.2 drive mount, for fast SSD storage, plenty of SATA slots, a sleek black design, and really nice RGB implementation. All in all, it does everything we need and fits proportionally in its ATX form factor inside this chassis. For the memory in this build, for the RAM, I selected two 16GB DIMMs of ASUS SPEC-06 D41. An update to their really fantastic D40 design. This kit has a more matte RGB diffusion up top with addressable RGB LEDs and a really nice metallic red heat spreader. You can get the black/dark grey heat spreader version 2 if you wish for a stealthier aesthetic, But all in all, these things are fantastic, with a fast 3000 MHz speed, 16 gigs of capacity, which is what I would recommend in 2018, and dual channel performance to give you just a couple more frames per second in certain titles. All in all, reliable, quick, and really not bad value for money make them a superb addition. For the next part in today's build, or should I say parts, the storage in this build, I selected an SSD and a hard drive. For the mass storage, for the hard drive, a 2TB Seagate Barracuda in a standard 3.5-inch form factor, and relatively quick 7200 RPM speed does the job nicely. 2000 gigs of fairly fast storage is going to be nice and reliable and give you plenty of room for your movies, music, games, your Steam and Origin libraries. You may also want to opt though for an SSD as well, and I would definitely recommend it. It's going to allow you to get fast Windows boot up times because this is the drive you're going to install your operating system on. They also have far lower failure rates than hard drives, so more important files can be backed up here and accessed at literally the blink of an eye. This particular drive is the Samsung 970 EVO. Whilst I've got a 1TB drive to hand, the 250 gig capacity is going to perform just as well, with a bit less room and a much more attractive price tag, shall we say. Fast boot up times, lots of mass storage, at a kind of a good price point works well for this build. For the next component in today's build for the graphics card, I selected the NVIDIA GeForce GTX 1070. This particular model is ASUS's ROG STRIX card and gives some superb cooling, factory overclocked performance and a superb design with lots of RGB implementation. Now, before you go destroying your keyboards in the comments section below, I can literally hear it now. There's a reason I picked this card over NVIDIA's recently announced RTX 2070. Now, NVIDIA announced the new RTX 2070, 2080 and 2080 Ti around a week or so ago now. Those new cards though come in nowhere near the ballpark price that these current gen options do, and don't actually provide much in the way of a performance increase. Around 20 to 25% is what you can expect, and the real selling point of the new GPUs is a feature called ray tracing. Now, ray tracing really helps to make shadows and textures far more realistic in certain game titles, but there's a big problem with the technology. The technology is completely brand new, and whilst NVIDIA can be praised for their innovation and development in this area, there's not really any games that can take advantage of such a feature yet, and you can pretty much guarantee that perhaps slightly older titles that have been out for a year or two now, that a lot of people are playing, will never get support for such a feature. As I said though, the main problem with an RTX card is the price point. They're ridiculously expensive, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. This thing's going to work well at 1440p and 4K, medium to high settings, whilst hitting the key 60 FPS mark, and that's all you really need. For the case in this build, for the penultimate part, I selected the Corsair Spec-06, one of the latest addition to Corsair's more budget-oriented mainstream case lineup. I actually reviewed this case in the card section here. Corsair cases are consistent for providing a good solid build experience, a really nice build quality, good cable management room and a fairly compact design. This particular chassis has good drive mounted support, a power supply shield and all the grommets in all the necessary places without A, costing a fortune or B, being overly large. Front panel USB 3 and an RGB strip up front top it off nicely. All in all, you can't go too far wrong here. For the final part in today's build though, for the power supply, I selected the Cooler Master MasterWatt 650. An 80+ bronze certified unit, this thing gives over 300 watts of headroom over the power this build requires. The semi-modular interface means you only plug in the cables you need, and the individually rubber sleeved cables are all black and look far better than some of the cheaper power supply units, kind of ketchup and mustard affair on the market. The semi-fanless design keeps it quiet, and the reliability and consistency from my perspective has been top notch. A really kind of low price point on this as well, really gives the cherry on top if you will, and I can't recommend this thing just quite enough. With that being said though, that just about wraps it up Links for everything will be in the description down below. Get subscribed, smash that like button, and follow me on the social media channels on your screen now. As always though, we'll see you in the next GeekaWhat video.